Okay, perfect. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for coming. I'm Amanda Patton, one of the guidance counselors here at Medfield High School. And I want to welcome all of our juniors and junior parents and guardians who are joining us tonight at our second virtual college panel. We have a great group of college admission representatives here tonight from a number of different schools to share their kind of advice and tips about the college process. So thank you all for joining us this evening. These events are always really helpful for our students and families. And as counselors, we always learn something new ourselves as well. So really appreciate you taking some time to talk with all of us this evening. We also have the rest of the MHS guidance staff here tonight. So hopefully you can see all of our faces as well. So just as a reminder, I want to make sure that you all know which guidance counselor you are working with. So as a review, if your last name starts with A through BO, you work with Stephanie Worthley. Stephanie, if you want to give a little wave. If your last name is BR through E, you work with Elise DeLuzio. Last name F through K with Ann Lodge. Last name L through Q with me, Amanda Patton. And last name R through Z with Eric Ornberg. So as we move through this panel, I'll be asking each of the college representatives to talk a little bit about their specific college and kind of what stands out, as well as just offer some general thoughts and their perspective from the admissions side of the college process. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so if you do have to hop off early, that's absolutely fine. We'll be sharing this out tomorrow as a recording that you could watch at a different time. And I also want the students and families to know that you are able to ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature. So if questions come up as you're listening in, feel free to put them in there. The guidance counselors will be monitoring the Q&A, so they may be responding to you directly, answering your questions, or they may just take note of your question and we'll be answering it live throughout the webinar. So feel free to put those questions in there. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists. So we have Jeff Gallant from Boston College joining us. Hi, Jeff. We have Samantha Reich from Tulane University. Hi, Sam. We have Kate Shea from Westfield State University. We have Jarrett Saunders from UMass Amherst. And we have Zaria Guyton from Northeastern University. So thank you all again so much for joining us. I'd love for each of you to just start with a brief overview of your college, kind of what stands out, and if there's anything new going on campus that would be helpful for families to know. Jeff, do you want to start talking about Boston College?
Sure thing, Amanda. Thank you, everybody. It's so good to be here. I've been reading applications from Medfield for many years at this point, and we just appreciate the relationship that we have with your school and your counseling office. It's a great group to work with. So it's very nice to be able to spend some time with you this evening. Boston College is a medium-sized university. We have about 9,400 undergrads, about 5,500 graduate students. Usually when students pick us, they often talk about liking the perceived balance that we're going to be able to provide them. And I think our medium size promotes balance. Our location, you're embedded in a neighborhood in Chestnut Hill, but have good access to the city. Our students are divided among 4 undergraduate divisions. So we have the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, the Carroll School of Management, the Lynch School of Education and Human Development, and the Cannell School of Nursing. We are a school that does not have Greek life. So our over 300 clubs and organizations drive social life on campus, and we also have a religious affiliation. We are Catholic, and more specifically, we were founded by the Jesuits, and the Jesuits have founded 27 colleges and universities in the United States. But I look forward to talking more with you. Thanks for having me this evening.
Okay, wonderful. Samantha, will you tell us a little bit about Tulane?
Sure. Again, my name is Sam Ricciol. I'm a senior admission counselor here at Tulane, and I work with students from the whole state of Massachusetts. So I was actually able to travel in person a little bit this fall. It was really exciting to finally get up there. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to do that this fall. But yeah, just a brief overview of Tulane. We are also a medium-sized institution located down here in New Orleans. I was actually thinking about y'all today because we're complaining about the winter weather and it's like 38 degrees outside and we are not having it. But New Orleans is a really, really incredible place to get to live and to learn as a college student. It's honestly probably my favorite city ever, period. And it's just a really, really fabulous place to be a young person. At Tulane, one of kind of the hallmarks of our academic experience is the idea of flexibility. When you're admitted to Tulane, even when you're applying, you're not applying to a specific major or a specific academic school. You're applying to the entire university, which also means that when you get here, you can take classes across all of our different schools, all of our different programs. You don't have to declare your major until the end of your sophomore year. And it's really common and very easy for our students to double major, have a major and a minor. A lot of them even have 2 and 3 minors. So this is a really, really great place. If maybe you're not sure what you want to study, you'll have plenty of time and support to figure it out. Or if you do know what you want to study, but you know that you want to study more than one thing, Tulane is an excellent place for that. We are also a research institution, so we're doing research in all of our academic departments. And even though we do have graduate programs at Tulane here on our Uptown campus, which is where our undergraduates live and learn, it's pretty much all undergraduates all the time, which means that research really is accessible to you while you're an undergraduate, which I think is super, super important. We're not trying to gatekeep or make you be part of a special program. If you want to do research, you absolutely can. And then finally, I think kind of in terms of more social things and extracurricularly, we are a very, very lively campus. I feel like our students are always running off to go do something else. They're running from something when they're coming to work with us here in the office. We do have Greek life here at Tulane, but I think really important to remember that geographically, yes, we are located in the deep South, but this is not Alabama. This is not Texas or Auburn or anything like that. We do have Greek life, but it's very much just one more piece of the kind of social experience here. You do not have to be in Greek life to have kind of a social life, if you will. Definitely something for everybody on campus. And then, of course, like I said, the city of New Orleans has a lot to offer as well. I think you can learn so much from the city that you can't learn on campus. And of course, you'll do plenty of that in your classrooms with your professors and your peers, but also I encourage my students to get out into the city as often as possible. This is a really, really special place, unlike any other city in the world. And so it can really teach you a lot if you're kind of willing to learn. So that's the basics, the quick version. Happy to be here with y'all tonight and looking forward to answering some of y'all's questions.
Thank you so much. Kate, can you tell us a little bit about Westfield State?
Sure. Just to echo my colleagues, thank you for having us. I'm watching the number of attendees climb, and this is great. So thanks for spending some time with us tonight. My name is Kate Shea. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission here at Westfield State. So Westfield State University, we are a 4-year public liberal arts institution located in Westfield, Massachusetts. So we're exit 41 off of the Mass Pike, or the old exit 3, whatever you're comfortable with at this point. So we're just under 2 hours away, which is a really nice distance, right? So for those students who maybe don't want to go too far away, this is a good location, or even a good starting point for you. So we've got about 4,000 full-time undergraduate students. Just quickly, we've got over 70 clubs and organizations. We do not have Greek life, but there is something for everyone. We are extremely residential. 90% of our first-year students are choosing to live on campus, and we do guarantee housing for 4 years. A couple of updates about campus. We are currently undergoing a $42 million renovation of our one of our original buildings on campus. It's Parenzo Hall, which houses a number of academic programs, including education. It also houses our learning disabilities program and our urban education program, as well as a number of other departments and offices as well, the registrar's office. So that should be done with COVID, we're hoping. It's already been extended. We're hoping within a year or two. We also have a few new majors and concentrations this year. We currently have a new art therapy major. We currently have a new music management major. We also have brought back our sports management concentration. And we are hoping for final approval for our data sciences major. So that'll be ready to go for you all next year. So I look forward to speaking with you. Please don't hesitate to ask questions, and thanks again.
Great, thank you. Jarrett, will you talk a little bit about UMass Amherst?
Sure, and thanks for having me. Kate was talking about the exit numbers. I'm not sure if I've been on the Turnpike since they changed the exit numbers. So we're off exit 8, the old exit 8, the Palmer exit. Let's just call it the Palmer exit. Whichever that exit that is now, that's the one you want to get off. So yeah, we're a couple hours ish from you, also in Western Massachusetts, in a great college town. Amherst is considered one of the better college towns in the country, not only because of what we bring to the table. There are actually 4 other colleges around us. You've got Smith, Mount Holyoke, Amherst, and Hampshire colleges. Together with UMass, we formed a 5-college consortium where you can take courses and use resources of all 5 schools by attending any one of them. So it kind of adds to what we offer academically, and on a social level makes for a great college town, great college atmosphere. There's a free bus system that connects all of us, and it's really a great atmosphere. Most of our students do live on campus. We have about 23,000 undergraduates. And like I said, most of them live on campus. Most of those who live off campus generally live right off campus. There are a lot of apartments, things like that in the immediate area around us. So it's very much a residential type of experience. People stick around on weekends, they join clubs, they follow the sports teams, all those kinds of things. So lots of things going on. People, so even though it's a big place, it's not a big impersonal place where people don't get to know one another. Really a great college atmosphere. And even the way the campus is set up, it's even though it's big, about 1,400 acres, it is located all in one area. So it's not broken up into different parts of town. It is centrally located. So that, coupled with the fact that most people stick around and live in the area, really makes for a great college experience. So definitely come and check us out. We have about 100 or so different majors. Of course, you can minor and double major. We have a program where you can design your own major. So if you see a few things you'd like to put together, you can do that, come up with your own unique major. And there are lots of great academic opportunities, whether it's study abroad, whether it's ROTC, all the different clubs and organizations that we offer, lots of different things you can do. So yeah, it's the big school experience, located, like I said, about 2 hours away. So definitely come and check us out. Thank you for having me tonight.
Great, thank you so much. And Zaria, can you talk about Northeastern?
Sure. Thank you, Amanda. And thank you all for joining us today. And yes, very happy to share all the things that are happening at Northeastern. Again, my name is Zaria Guyton, and I'm an assistant director. And it's certainly a pleasure to share everything about this wonderful school. But know that overall Northeastern is a larger school. We are located in the city of Boston, right in the heart. And we have an undergraduate population of about 18,000 students. But although we are a larger school, you still get the nice close-knit feel, which is great. And that's really evident within your classroom. So your learning environment is still nice and intimate, with about a 14:1 student faculty ratio, as well as about 2/3 of your classes with an average class size of about 19 students. So that connection that you build with your classmates as well as your professor is still very, very possible. As it can also lead to many different opportunities. Your professor can be great mentors, hopefully leading you to more experiences outside the classroom. We want you to be able to apply what you're learning in the classroom to the real world. So we are a school that has very strong pillars of experiential learning. We have a number of global experiences, study abroad, dialogue with civilizations, which is faculty led, as well as our NUN program, great for first year students who are looking to take their study abroad experience immediately right after they leave from home. And then yet we also are very well known for our co-op program, where it's for all of our majors, giving you that full-time work experience during your undergraduate career, where you can experience for about 1 to 2 times. And that's when you pay no Northeastern tuition, you're not taking any classes, you're working full-time and getting paid as well. And then we have wonderful research opportunities. We're also a research institution. So again, a number of students can gain those opportunities no matter what major you are. You don't have to be a STEM major. If you feel research is necessary for you, you can embark upon that experience. And then we also have community service and service learning opportunities. So students can embark on all 4 of those opportunities, or you can pick and choose. It's really up to you. But kind of hopping back quickly to academics, When we say it's up to you, we want you guys to be in the driver's seat of your education. So we have more than 270 combined and regular majors. So that means there's a lot of choices, but we get very specific. And I think that's great for students who want to mix and mingle a lot of their interests together. We have a lot of flexibility, even though there's a lot of choices, but then you'll also have a lot of guidance at the same time. Okay, so don't fret about that. We don't want you guys to get overwhelmed. So we want you to have those choices, but you clearly will be guided along the way as well. So, with that being said, Northeastern, you will certainly, be able to define your future based on the education that certainly integrates, the in and outside classroom learning environment. So I look forward to answering more questions for you all as we kind of move forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much. So the first question I have is, on your campus, what academic support resources are available for students? And with regard to admission, is special consideration given to students with learning disabilities, and how are these students supported on campus? Kate, I'd love to hear a little bit maybe from you first about Westfield State, and then if any other panelists has something to add, feel free to jump in.
Sure, thanks so much. So I love talking about this. I am the primary point person for all of our students who are applying with any type of learning disability to Westfield State. So all colleges and universities are required to provide reasonable accommodations to any student who comes up with proper documentation. So whether a student has a concussion or a visual impairment or has a diagnosed learning disability. What is different about Westfield State is that we do have a specific admission-based learning disabilities program. So we do have a disability services or access office that can assist any student who needs some sort of accommodation. But our Bonacco Center Learning Disabilities Program, we accept students, we review students during the admission process. Now, I will say, admissions offices are not, and I'm in the thick of things. I'm doing panels 3 times a week with our disability services office. So, one of the biggest points is that admission offices can't use documentation in order to make an admission decision. It's important to know that. So while, with our program, I am asking for certain testing, diagnostic testing, or a psychoeducational evaluation that has been completed within the past 3 years. And that must come to the admission office. It's not being part of the admission decision. And I'm just looking for a date in which tests have been administered. What makes it different than a traditional disability services office is that there's some extra perks. So we are looking for college-ready students who are taking college preparatory level courses, students who are succeeding with any accommodations that are being provided, and students who really want to be in the college level setting. And so these perks include priority registration. For a lot of our students, they may qualify for extra test time. And so we don't want to stack their classes 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, because college professors don't let you take half the exam during their class and then take the other half during another time frame. That doesn't work. So we want to make sure we adjust your schedule based on what accommodations you may need. But there's priority registration. There's a program advisor, so coming from a high school, especially a high school like Medfield, right, where if you do receive some sort of accommodation, you probably have a great relationship with your school counselor or with your special education liaison. You've probably had your teachers once or twice before, so they may know you. And then you go to a college or university, whether it's 20,000 students or whether it's a size like Westfield and it's 4,000 students, and you don't know these professors, but you're entitled to accommodations. How do you go about getting them? It can be very overwhelming. And mom and dad, parent or guardian can't be part of that process once you go to college. So that's where our program advisor steps in. You'll meet them during the admission process. You'll meet with them during orientation. You'll meet with them when you get on campus. You'll meet with them weekly. They'll help you communicate with your professors to set up those accommodations so that you can be successful while you're at Westfield. Other perks, I think we would all venture to say that we offer tutoring services and reading and writing services and things like that. But, it's really kind of a great type of connection that we offer. And, you know, the goal for the student coming into this program is for them to become an independent learner and a strong self-advocate. And we get students who come into the program who have varying levels of these abilities. And so we're here to help. There is no fee for our program, but because it is admission-based, you do apply right on the application. Check off the box on the Common App or on our own institutional app. All of those students will come to me. I collect documentation, transcripts, you know, the letters of recommendation, and then send everything over to the Bonacos Academic Center. There is an interview required, you know, and then typically, you know, your decision within a week. At any rate, I don't want to take up any more time. I am happy to answer questions. At some point, I'll put my email in the chat, I'm sure, and you can, or it can be shared, and you can always feel free to contact me with anything. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Kate. Would anyone else like to talk a little bit about different academic supports on campus available to all students? Jeff, do you want to, could you talk a little bit about what's available at BC?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We have the Connors Family Learning Center. That is a service utilized by a good many of our students. And so, you know, if a student self-discloses on the application, what it does for us is it triggers a committee of professionals to participate in our review. So I don't see any downsides, and we certainly have resources to help all different types of learners, and they're being utilized by a significant percentage of our population.
Great, thank you all so much. So this is kind of a bigger question. I'd love to hear from all of the panelists on this one, but I know there were a lot of questions from students and families about whether or not they should be declaring their major as they are applying. And for those you know, reps whose college offers kind of different schools within the school, are there different admission requirements? Is it okay to be undecided? I'd love to just hear from each of you a little bit about that and declaring the major and how that works in the admission process. Zaria, do you mind starting off talking about how that works at Northeastern?
Definitely. So actually beginning this year, we were admitting students into Northeastern as a whole. So, you know, we previously had criteria where we reviewed students based on the major they were applying for, but that was not the case this year. We're going to move forward with that in the years to come. Obviously, if there's any changes, we clearly will let families know, and in a timely manner. But we certainly saw this as a great opportunity, clearly, because we know a lot of students in general, college students overall across the country, change their major a lot. And then because we offer so many major opportunities, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, if you're applying into a school, that's not going to hinder your admittance. So, but that being said, if you will still, you know, note a major of choice and even a second choice that you are thinking about. That's simply what we want to hear about is your interest. And obviously there's going to be students who love talking about, you know, their majors of interest, et cetera. So we don't want you to hold that back. Even if you're a student who is noting that you're applying as undeclared, that is perfectly fine as well, as we have a wonderful program for students who aren't declared, because, you know, we want you to be able to figure out and have time to discover more of the academic options at Northeastern. So please note that if you put undeclared or if you put a major, we will be looking at your acceptance for the university as a whole. Okay.
So
Wonderful, thanks.
oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Jared.
Oh, sure. So, so at UMass Amherst, you can apply to either a specific major or you can apply undeclared. If you apply undeclared, we don't have just a straight up sort of undeclared major anymore. We have what we call exploratory tracks. So we want you to narrow it down a little bit. So you'll see on the drop-down menu all the specific majors, and then you'll see exploratory tracks. And they're very broad areas, and they're not binding. They're just a way to kind of have you narrow it down a little bit. So there are things like there's a humanities track, there's a social sciences track, natural sciences, and so on. So you choose one of those tracks. There are many majors within those tracks, but you will have an advisor that's in that area of study within that school or college, so that they can, you'll have an academic home as soon as you get there, and they can help you narrow it down to a particular major. And if you want to choose a major that's outside of that, they can help you make that transition as well. There are a few majors that are more selective than others. Really, the four big ones would be nursing, computer science, the Eisenberg School of Management, which is where our business majors reside, and engineering. Because of their size and popularity, they have to control the numbers a little bit more. So they have particular requirements in terms of courses that you need and things like that. Two of those majors, the School of Management and the nursing major, you have to get into in your first year. They don't allow you to switch into those majors once you're on campus. So you have to choose that major as your first choice when you come in. And if you don't get it, for nursing, typically students are not admitted, even if they have an otherwise solid application. Because generally speaking, what we find is that students who want nursing more than they want the school, right? So we used to admit to second choice nursing into another second choice, but at about a 98% rate, they wouldn't take us up on our offer. So students who apply to nursing, you have to get nursing. If you don't get it, you generally will not be admitted to the university. Now we make exceptions here and there, and you can make note of whether or not you would come for a second choice in the application, and we handle those on a case-by-case basis. But you should know that about nursing. With the School of Management, you can come in under a second choice major and just stick with that major or some other major, but you just can't switch into the School of Management. And then for engineering and for computer science, those two, you can come in under a second choice major, and you can work your way into those two majors. Okay. The vast majority of our majors are open majors. So if you're interested in sociology, psychology, biology, you put those down as your first choice, you get into the university, you get into the major, and away you go. You have 2 years to settle on a major. So if you come in one of the exploratory tracks, or if you change your mind, you can do that up until the beginning of your junior year. And I should also mention too that the performing arts, for dance and music, you do have to audition. For art and for architecture, you have to submit portfolios for those. So it's kind of a two-part process for those. So about 25% of our students come in, our first year students come in undeclared. So if you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, you certainly would not be alone. And we have those, that system in place to help you choose a major and achieve what you're looking to do.
Great. Sam, will you talk a little bit about Tulane?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but similar to Northeastern, you absolutely do not have to declare your major when you're applying to Tulane. You are applying to the entire university, so you're basically applying to all 75 of our majors and all 5 of our academic schools all at once. You are not at any kind of disadvantage if you want to put undecided on your application. We really are just looking at your major just to kind of like know what you're interested in. It's really not a deciding factor in our admission decisions at all. When you get here, if you are undecided, we will match you with an academic advisor who works with students who aren't quite sure what they want to do. So you'll definitely feel, supported in that way. Any student who comes in declared with a major will also be matched with an academic advisor who works with students in that academic school. Like I said before, that's kind of one of the things we really pride ourselves on at Tulane is the time and support that you have to choose your major. And yeah, just remember that you're not applying to a specific academic school or a specific major. You're just applying to the entire university. So no different admission rates or anything like that for different majors. Super flexible and really kind of opens up a lot of possibilities for you.
Great, thank you. Jeff.
Yep, sure. I would say that I think every student's a little undecided. Even if your first major sticks for all 4 years, I mean, you probably pick up a second major or minor. So I think that's not something you should be terribly concerned about. Every school is going to make it easy for you to do that and graduate in 4 years. I'd say the question is just, does it impact your admissions chances? And at BC, whether you go undecided or choose a major has no bearing on your admissions chances. But one level above that, we do look at the school you're applying to, and we do ask you to apply to one of our 4 schools, and there's no second choice major. So with one exception, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, we have a brand new engineering program that we brought in 25 students last year. This year it's 50, and it'll be 50 moving forward. And that's the only major where you can declare a second choice within the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. That's where engineering is housed, and you can pick another major within Morrissey, because I'm sure there are going to be students that we can admit to the university that just aren't great fits for human-centered engineering. So we don't say yes to engineering, but we say yes to BC. And just for us, I would say that business, education, and nursing are all direct entry. It's much easier for students to flow from our professional schools to the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. Morrissey is the largest of our 4 schools by a significant margin. So if you have interest in multiple schools, your best bet is to apply to the professional school at BC now out of high school. Again, because it's direct entry, and you would be able to have a second major or minor in arts and sciences without restriction. If you're in arts and sciences, you can take coursework in the professional schools, but there may be limitations. And while we do allow a small group of students to internally transfer from Morrissey to professional schools each year, again, it's a very small number and not something we guarantee. But I think all of our schools have resources to make sure that you're as successful and figure things out freshman year and are able to stay on track and graduate in 4 years. I think the only students that don't graduate from BC in 4 years, it's because of some unforeseen health or personal circumstance. It's never because of, or rarely because of curriculum not being able to get the classes you want. And we give students to the end of their sophomore year to declare a major. So even if you wait till the end of your sophomore year, I still think you should have good confidence that you'll be able to graduate in 4 years, no problem.
Wonderful, thanks. And Kate, I think last one, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to add. Students, we encourage them to apply to the major of their choice. They can certainly choose a second choice major. With nursing, it is our most competitive major. It is a direct entry program. And so, we will admit to a second choice major, but like it was said before, we don't yield a high number of those students, but otherwise we recognize that students are going to change throughout their time, and we allow for that flexibility. So, we'll help you figure out what you want to do. And, I think just as a piece of advice for students and parents or guardians as well, I think a lot of that choosing a major is kind of not knowing exactly what kind of job you can get within a major. I'd be willing to bet, looking at this panel, each of us had very different undergraduate majors in college, and we never would have seen ourselves here. I remember sitting in my career center and being like, wait, that's a job. And I remember the rep from my undergrad institution and thought, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. 20 years later, I didn't know I'd still be here. But I think learning about job opportunities, taking advantage of internships and research opportunities and shadow days and study abroad, I think those will all help students kind of build their path to their career, no matter what their major is.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was really helpful. We had a couple of questions about the college essay. How do you evaluate the college essay from the admissions side? And are there just any general tips that you have for students who are trying to write, about themselves and their personality in this short essay? Any tips or tricks, or just how it's kind of evaluated on the admissions side would be helpful. Jeff, I feel like you've given us some good feedback about this in the past. Do you mind talking a little bit about how you evaluate these essays and any thoughts you have?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure this is a topic that we love to comment on. So I'll just say a couple of things. But adults, if you're asked to read essays, I would keep in mind that we're used to hearing a 16, 17, 18-year-old's voice. And I don't think it takes a ton of professional experience to identify the essay that's had too many hands work on it, right? And so just because it isn't exactly the way you would say it doesn't mean it won't be compelling to us. I think the key, though, is just given the volume of essays that we have to read, being concise. You should have some sort of point. What are you trying to convey about your personality, your character, your interests? And students, having adults or people you trust read it. If you're asked to do that, loved ones, guardians, parents that are in the audience, if the writing's starting to drift off message, sort of tightening up the sample and taking that out, and just what are you trying to convey about your character, your personality, your interests, that's going to enhance the college of your choice. That leads to, I think, a really effective essay.
Great, thank you so much. I feel like it would be helpful to hear a little bit, especially as course selection time is coming up for our juniors for their senior year. I know that sometimes students have difficulty trying to figure out, how many, rigorous courses they should be taking. Should they be taking harder courses and potentially getting lower grades in them versus taking courses that maybe aren't as rigorous? Kind of protecting their GPA. I was wondering if one or two of you might comment just a little bit on that in terms of how the transcript is evaluated in terms of kind of weighted and unweighted GPA and things like that. Zaria, do you mind starting off talking about how Northeastern kind of evaluates the transcript in courses?
Sure. Northeastern certainly takes a very, very close look at students' coursework. Clearly, we want to see that you are preparing yourself for the college curriculum, as well as if you're applying to Northeastern, for Northeastern's rigorous curriculum as well. So with that being said, it is helpful to see that you're challenging yourself in the classroom. If we see maybe a little bit of, lower grades, obviously this is not across the board or anything like that, but we want to see that you're exposing yourself to the tough work because, as you're kind of going through that coursework, you're clearly going to come across it again while you're in college, but clearly you're putting your best foot forward, using whatever techniques are necessary for you to be successful in that class, rather than, we obviously want you to explore, and we love to see that you've taken maybe a couple of senior classes. I understand. I remember my sister did the college process last year, and she was going through her course selection. I was certainly on top of that, but she wanted to take a class that was a little more, something that she was interested in, obviously, but one that wasn't as rigorous. And she left room for at least that one, because obviously during her junior year, she, took on rigorous coursework, and obviously she still continued that her senior year, but she left room for one. We obviously, again, want to get to know you as a person and then obviously as a student. So it is okay if there is a class or two that you want to take that you're certainly interested in. And obviously if it resonates with you and you're clearly talking about it throughout your application, that's great to hear. But I think the main piece is that you're exposing yourself to the rigorous coursework, because that's obviously we're going to come across in college. We want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward and preparing yourself for the college level work. When it comes to their coursework and it being hand in hand what we're looking at with regards to GPA, seeing the rigorous coursework, I think, certainly matters a little bit more, but they're still very, very equal. But I think maybe it's a little bit of an inch higher when it comes to the rigor of your classwork. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Did anyone else have anything to add, or is that kind of similar throughout the different colleges? Yeah,
similar, in terms of how we look at the courses, very similar. I would say, for us, we do recalculate the GPA. So those courses that are, honors courses or AP or IB or college courses are going to have more weight when we recalculate the GPA. So they're helpful in that sense. It is kind of the age-old question, should I take the college prep course and get a good grade, or a great grade, I guess, or take the honors or AP course and get a good solid grade. It's really sort of up to the individual. I would say, if you can get B's or better, and you're pretty confident in the AP or honors course you want to take, if it's something that you're interested in, and take it at the higher level. If you did well in history, take AP US history. Why not? Push yourself a little bit. But don't push yourself to the point where you're getting C's and D's. That's not going to help you. We don't want you to stress yourselves out either. You want to, it's work, it's school, but we don't want you to get to the point where you're not sort of, at least learning something and enjoying yourself and sort of, high school isn't supposed to be, that much of a chore, right? So we want you to, take appropriate level courses, and it's within the context of your own abilities and within the context of what your high school offers, right? We want to see that you take advantage of some of the things that they offer too. So, we're not just looking at it as, this person didn't take X amount of AP courses, that sort of thing. It's all within the context of the rest of the application.
That was very well said. Thank you so much. And I think from a guidance counselor perspective, if you're having difficulty figuring out, which courses you feel like you should sign up for, that would be a great time to reach out to your guidance counselor. We love to have individual conversations with students about course selection, and it's really about finding balance for yourself, looking at what are my outside of school commitments? How am I doing this year? What's my stress level been? What are my interests? And really picking courses that you feel like you can be successful in and truly enjoy. And I think if you're doing that and taking what's best for you, you really can't go wrong. So certainly reach out to your guidance counselor if you want to have individual conversations about that. We're always happy to give feedback. I'd love to hear a little bit about interviews. Sam, I believe Tulane offers interviews. Can you talk a little bit about how interviews are used in the admissions process, and if there's any general tips you have for students and families about interviews? That would be great.
Yeah, for sure. We actually started interviews like when COVID happened as kind of an extra way to reach out and be able to talk to y'all when we couldn't in person. So they have kind of become a fixture, if you will, in the Tulane admission process. Ours are all virtual. And honestly, like we try to keep them as comfortable as possible. They definitely are interviews. You're talking to an admission counselor in our office, and we are, taking notes about what we're talking about, and they will be used in the admission process when we're reading your application. But something really, I think, important to know is we're not here to intimidate you. We're not here to make this a super scary thing. I actually remember the only interview I ever did in my college process, my admission representative that I was talking to did not smile once in the entire interview. And it was the most nerve-wracking thing I'd ever done up to that point in my life. So just know that that's not what we're trying to do. We're really just trying to get to know you. And for us, one of the main things that this helps with is answering kind of two questions. The first is the student really a good fit for Tulane, and is Tulane a good fit for them? So I guess that's kind of a two-parter. But we're just trying to figure out if this would actually be a place that you would enjoy and succeed in. And then the second thing is the student actually interested in Tulane? It's really kind of obvious. It's super easy for us to tell when we're talking to somebody and their mom has forced them to sign up for this interview and they're not actually that interested. So that's kind of how we use interviews in our process. Again, they're not supposed to be super scary. This is not going to be a make or break decision or make or break piece of your application. If you have a bad day and it doesn't go as well as you think it should have or wanted it to, don't worry about it. You can absolutely still redeem yourself in other parts of your application. But we host interviews starting in the summertime leading up to your senior year. So for those of you all that are juniors, you will be able to start signing up for interviews with us probably May or June. We're altering our interview schedule slightly. So what you see on the website right now is not entirely accurate. So if you don't see interviews in April, don't worry about it. They're coming. But yeah, we'll start in the summertime. We like to get a jump on it because honestly, by the time the fall rolls around, y'all are running around doing 17,000 things. We are on the road trying to come meet you in person. So we like to start them early. But yeah, that's interviews with Tulane. Like I said, just know that we're just trying to get to know you. We're not trying to make this a really stressful process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If you're wondering if colleges you're interested in are offering interviews, you can look at the admissions website for each of the individual colleges, and there should be more details about how they use interviews in the process, if they're offered or not at all. So definitely check that out if you're interested in interviewing. Kind of tying into the interview process and making connections with colleges, I'd love to hear a little bit more about this idea of demonstrated interest. So I know some colleges kind of take note of this and other colleges not so much. I do think that one positive from the pandemic from a college perspective is that I think there are so many different ways to connect virtually. Obviously, Sam in Tulane, I know that colleges, offer these virtual tours and have a lot of virtual offerings that weren't available in the past. So I'd love to hear from one or two of you just about how a student can demonstrate their interest and the types of ways that they can kind of connect with colleges and get a real feel for campus. Jeff, do you want to start and talk about BC?
Sure thing, Amanda. I think we don't practice interest as dramatically as some other schools do, where it's factored into maybe admissions decisions. But I think anytime you have the opportunity to give your information to a college, you should take advantage of that. We all use sort of tools to tailor content to your interests. So the more we know about you, the more appropriate messaging you'll get from us and the more relevant it'll be. And Amanda, to your point, I think we've had to scramble and we had to do entire virtual admitted student programs for the class of 2020 that continued last year. So there's a lot of content and a lot more opportunities to interact with colleges virtually. And I mean, maybe you're looking at it as a way to help your admissions chances. And at some schools, maybe that's an appropriate way to look at it. But at the very least, it's a good way for you to get to know the school better. I'm sure it hasn't been easy learning about schools virtually with campus visit opportunities limited. Hopefully that'll lift a little bit here in the coming months. But I think there is still a lot of content that we use for the classes of 2020 and 2021 on our social media channels or websites. And it's just good for your own education and information to take advantage of that.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add, or kind of same responses, Jeff?
I would just say we don't track demonstrated interest. However, if you do find yourself on the wait list down the road, that's a good time to let us know that we would still be your first choice if we were to take you off the wait list. We don't want to take people off the wait list who aren't going to come. So if you do find yourself on the wait list, let us know that we're still a top choice for you. But other than that, we don't track demonstrated interest in any meaningful way.
Great, thank you. I want to move on to talk a little bit about standardized tests. So I know that one of the things that came out of the pandemic is that a lot of the colleges went test optional. So that's opened up some options for a lot of students, which is great. But I know that a lot of students have difficulty in figuring out, well, do I send my test score or do I not? And does test optional really mean test optional? So I'd love to hear kind of how some guidance about how a student can decide whether or not to send their scores and if test optional really means test optional. Kate, do you want to start in talking about Westfield?
Sure. So all of the 9 state universities, not counting the UMass system, are test optional at this point, and we will continue to be going forward. The only program that I can't say definitively that it will stick with is nursing. So that has yet to be decided. And I think for those more competitive programs, you may see that. I think there is one state university that is planning on requiring SAT scores for nursing. So it's always really helpful to contact the individual college and university. And I always tell students and parents, you don't have to tell your name, just ask your question. And that's okay. Similarly, whether or not to send your test scores, kind of if you're an A/B student, and I got a 1250 on my SATs, should I send them? We want to find you the best fit. Hopefully that's our institution, but we're not going to lead you astray. We can kind of give you ideas of where your SAT should fall. For us being a state institution, typically if you have a 3.0 or above GPA, you don't need to send your SATs. I will say there is still one state funded scholarship that does require an SAT at this point. Hopefully it's gone for next year. But the Tsongas scholarship, which is tuition and fees, so it's a pretty significant scholarship in the amount of about $12,000, does still require an SAT or ACT score. But for the majority of our students, if you have a 3.0 or above, you certainly don't need to send those SATs. Under a 3.0, depending on how you did, I would definitely encourage you to submit it or give us a call and we can give you some guidance. But
Great, perfect. Does anyone else have anything to add about the test score piece and how to decide?
Yeah, I would say to echo what Kate said, make sure you check with the individual schools because test optional is going to mean different things at different colleges and universities. And some, and then there's also the sort of the distinction between test optional and test blind, right? Some schools, whether or not you send a test score, if you send a test score, they're not going to look at it, right? Those schools are test blind. Test optional schools generally will still consider the test scores, but just at different for different reasons or at different levels, if you will. So with us, it is truly optional. Even with the selective programs, if you don't send your test scores, great. And if you do send them, that's great too. You may want to, if you're trying to decide whether or not you want to send the test scores, every school is going to have their averages or their middle 50% somewhere on their website. So you can sort of take a look at that and kind of get a sense like, okay, I'm right in that average area or I'm above average. Maybe I'll send my test scores. And if you're significantly below it, you may not want to send your test scores. It really depends on the school. If you're applying to say, a very like a math heavy program, like an engineering or a business major, and you got a 750 on your SAT math, you might want to send your test scores because it's another thing that demonstrates that that you're good at math, right? Or at least you were on that Saturday back in May or October, right? So so if you want to, if there are different considerations to keep in mind. So for us, if you send your test scores, we're going to consider them. They're not going to be sort of the end all be all like they may have been in the past, but they're going to be part of that holistic review process that we're pretty much all colleges are kind of considering at this point. Now we are test optional for one more year. So you juniors out there, when you apply, we will be test optional. After that, it will evaluate and kind of see where we are. So it's a 3-year trial run. So we'll see how it turns out and sort of go from there.
I'll just add to, and Jared and Kate said it really well. We have not made a commitment to the class of 2023 yet, but we have been test optional for 2021 and 2022. Last year, we were pretty happy with how the numbers worked out in our first year of test optional. It was an even 50-50 split among our enrolled group. The admitted students, it was a little bit more skewed towards test takers, 57-43, but still 43% of the students we admitted did not submit a test. So, if you're looking at, as Jared said, our middle 50% is on the website. If you're in that range, you probably should send those scores and above. You should send those scores. If you're below those and you feel like your transcript is going to be the strength of your application and your testing doesn't complement your transcript well, I think you can apply to schools like BC and the schools on this panel test optional with confidence. I will just say though, if you're not giving us the testing, we're going to scrutinize the transcript even more. So it's important for you to talk to your counselor if there are any things that you're concerned about with your application or your candidacy beyond your testing, right? Because it's one less bit of information we're going to get to help us make our decision. So I think you just want to make sure you address anything that you're worried about, and your counselors can help give context to curriculum choices you made or anything that you want them to highlight in your extracurricular life that you're really proud of. I think all applicants should do that, but I think especially students that are maybe applying test optional should have that conversation with their counselors.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. I'd love to talk a little bit just about early decision versus early action and regular decision. And is there a difference in kind of acceptance rate depending on when you apply? Zaria, do you want to talk about this for Northeastern?
Certainly. So at Northeastern, we have 4 decisions, 2 that are binding and 2 that are non-binding. So for the binding decisions, we have early decision 1 and 2. Usually early decision has like a fall deadline, and then early decision 2 has like a January deadline. So with that being said, overall for our early decision binding, it's like I said, binding, where if you are admitted to Northeastern, you have to withdraw all of your applications from other universities, and obviously ultimately deposit at Northeastern. And if you're considering early decision, overall, you basically are, committing to Northeastern, or noting that NU is a great academic, social, and financial fit. Those are the three things that we really want you all to converse with, even with your counselors, with families, guardians, etc. And really, talk about it and see. You can love the school, obviously. If you ever are trying to figure out what the financials look like, we actually offer early financial reads in the fall. So just think about that opportunity, so that way you can get a nice ballpark. Clearly, that won't include anything like merit scholarships or anything like that, but hopefully it gives you a nice visual of what to expect if you are admitted, and what your financial aid package will possibly look like. So that way you are able to confidently apply for ED, and then if admitted, obviously confidently deposit. And then with regards to early action and regular decision, obviously EA is for a student who just, very interested as to where we get the bulk of our applications from, and you're just applying early, and you'll hear from us. Actually, for at least the seniors, those decisions may be coming out mid-January, or later January, excuse me. But for regular decision, again, if you still feel like Northeastern is obviously on your list and you just need a little bit more time, then you'll hear from us for RD usually in April. But with regards to acceptance rate between the different decisions, early action and regular decision, which are the non-binding ones, those have a lower acceptance rate, usually at about 18%. That's how they've been in previous years, and that's kind of how they're shaping out to be, possibly even a little bit lower this year. And then for early decisions, for the binding decisions, I always get twisted when I'm talking about them. I mix up the names, so I try to let me talk a little bit slower. But for the binding decisions, the acceptance rate is a little bit higher. You're seeing the percentage be at about like 25 to 30%. We do get a lower amount of applications through early decision, usually about 1,000 or so, or 2,000 or so per ED1 and 2. And then early action, that's where you're seeing the numbers skyrocket to like almost 60K. So that's where obviously the acceptance rate is lower for EA and RD. Our website goes into a lot of depth. It breaks it down line by line. So if you're really wondering even what the benefits are for early decision, and if that aligns with you and your values, you can definitely look at that on our website as well. And obviously any questions, you feel free to reach out to our office.
Perfect. That was very helpful. Does anyone else have anything to add, or is that kind of cover it? Good. Perfect. I would say any student and family who is talking about early decision, that would be another great time to reach out to your guidance counselor, just to talk about kind of the pros and cons. I think early decision can be a great option for some students, but because it is binding, you want to really be sure that you have truly decided that the school is your first choice. And just from a financial aid perspective, knowing that you're kind of choosing that school without being able to kind of compare financial aid packages from multiple colleges. So definitely a great time to have a conversation with your guidance counselor if that is an option that you're thinking about. Perfect. I also just want to remind people, we have a couple more questions I'll ask the panelists. I think one person was raising their hand for a question. I just want to remind everybody that we have the Q&A chat feature, so feel free to write your questions in there. You can see some of the counselors are answering the questions directly if they're not being answered live. And then at the end of the panel, I'll give a couple minutes if there's any other questions we can answer live. So just a reminder to use the Q&A. I want to talk a little bit about scholarships and financial aid in general. What are the different types of financial aid that may be offered to students and families? I know there's things like merit scholarships and need-based aid. Some schools are need blind, some are not. If one or two of you could talk just a little bit about the financial aid piece and what students and families can expect in that process, that would be very helpful. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of Tulane and financial aid?
Yeah, for sure. So we offer both merit scholarships and need-based financial aid. starting with merit scholarships, just by submitting your application, it doesn't matter which round you submit through, as long as you submit a complete application to us, you will be considered for partial merit scholarships. Those awards typically start at, somewhere pretty low, like $2,000 or $3,000 a year, and can go all the way up to about $30,000 a year. So there's nothing extra you need to do except submit your application to be considered for those. Now, we do also have a few larger scholarships, and namely full tuition, as well as a few cost of attendance merit scholarships. Important difference there as well. Full tuition only covers your tuition and fees, whereas cost of attendance covers tuition, fees, room, and board, at least at Tulane. So keep those kind of differences in mind as well. But we, like I said, require separate applications for those larger scholarships. So it's mostly going to be the Paul Tulane Award, the Dean's Honor Scholarship, the Community Service Fellowship, and there's one more that I am forgetting that I cannot remember right now, but it's on our website. But just really, really important to note that those are separate applications, and they also have a specific deadline of December 5th. So if you're going to apply for those other scholarships at Tulane, really, really important that you apply either early decision or early action. So you don't have to go binding to be considered for those, but you do need to apply early. We are not able to consider regular decision applicants for those scholarships. So that's kind of the basics about merit scholarship. Just in case anybody doesn't know, merit scholarships are based on your academic performance, right? So we're going to take a look at your transcript and then your test scores if you submit them. Can't speak for everybody else, but at Tulane, we get a lot of questions also about merit scholarships and test optional, and like, will I still get them if I'm test optional? Yes, absolutely. You are not going to be at a disadvantage in any way in the admission process, including when it comes to merit scholarships, if you want to go test optional. So that's kind of going back to that question that Amanda just asked. We truly are test optional. So that's the merit scholarship piece. The need-based aid piece is completely separate from the admission process at Tulane. So I, as your admission counselor, will only have access to the things that you submit as part of your admission application. I physically cannot look at any of your financial aid information, because we don't want that to affect the way I read your application. We want your decision to be made purely based on your application and who you are as a person and a student, not on your family's financial status. So the financial aid process goes through a separate office. We will do financial aid packages only once you've been admitted. So especially if you're going to go early decision, really, really, really just cannot emphasize enough how important it is to talk finances before you go early decision. And then if you're going to apply early action, just be aware that, it is going to take us 2 to 3 weeks after you receive your acceptance to get you your financial aid package. Every student who applies to Tulane is assigned a financial aid counselor, similar to how you have an admission counselor. They know all the ins and outs. We ask our students to submit both FAFSA as well as the CSS profile. I think probably most people are at least familiar with the term FAFSA, but CSS is kind of less known, I've found. The CSS profile is another need-based aid application that you submit actually through the College Board. And we do ask you to submit both of those, because you're essentially applying for money from 2 different pools. You're through FAFSA, you're applying for aid from the federal government, whereas when you apply through CSS, you're applying for aid from the university itself. Again, both are need-based, but still 2 different applications. And important to fill out both, because you might get money from one but not the other, or potentially even both. They do ask slightly different questions about your family's financial status. So we really do want you to submit both of those. And I think that's everything you need to know in a very short amount of time about financial aid at Tulane.
That was great, Sam. Thank you so much. I would say, as you're narrowing down your college list, I would encourage students and families to look at the financial aid site for each individual colleges, just to see what scholarships are offered. Are you automatically considered? Do you apply separately? And kind of how the financial aid piece works at each school. So definitely take a look at that if the financial aid piece is part of the process for the family. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I do want to give Jarrett and Kate just a couple minutes to talk about kind of the admissions criteria for the state colleges, because it's a little bit different in terms of how they evaluate students. So does one of you want to talk a little bit about how that may look a little bit different for applicants?
All right, yeah, I'll start.
All
So,
right, thanks, Jared.
yeah, sure. So there, with the state universities, there's sort of general criteria that will determine whether or not you're eligible to attend one of the state universities. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be admitted to the state universities, because we all have different admissions criteria, right? So it's across the board. I mean, there are quite a few state universities, and there's the UMass system, and we're all different in terms of the criteria for whether it's for different majors or for what have you. So, or for the different scholarships and all those kinds of things. So a lot of times people will call and say, well, I got this scholarship at UMass Lowell, and he's in the honors program. Why can't UMass Amherst give me that? It's like, well, it's different. We all have different criteria. So you have to consider that. Sometimes people think that, oh, well, they all have the same criteria. They're all in one application, any of those kinds of things. They're all different. We all have our own applications and so on. So there are kind of two parts to it. There's there's qualifying, where you have to have, at least a 3.0, or you have to, have a certain, back when we were taking SATs, you had to have a certain SAT, that sort of thing. But then on top of that sort of eligibility is admissibility to the specific college or university. So we all recalculate the GPA. We use the same system for that. So that's the same across the board. But other than that, we all use different criteria to get into them. And generally speaking, yes, like being that we're the sort of the largest and the flagship, if you will. Our criteria tends to be a little bit more difficult than the others, but it's not always the case. It depends on the major too. So you can't just assume that oh well, that one's easy to get into, or that one's not. They're all different. So you really have to sort of do your homework as far as which one is going to be the appropriate fit for you.
I think that's really important what you said about fit. And I was thinking about it as Amanda was talking earlier, and it's not just academic fit, it's location fit, it's financial fit, it's social fit, it's really getting on campus and, comparing financial aid awards, comparing the programming that the institution offers, et cetera. Just to echo Jarrett, yes, I mean, we all have different admission criteria. We all have the same basic minimum eligibility standards. However, depending on the programming, depending on the majors, depending on everything, that each institution is facing and working with, you may be accepted to one and not accepted to the other. Keep in mind that, and I just got this question the other day as well, is there one kind of like universal application to the state institutions? Unfortunately, there's not, because we are all very different. We all offer different majors. We're all different sizes. We're actually all different costs, because while we're governed by the same, body, the Department of Higher Education, we're all given the autonomy to make different decisions regarding each of our own institutions, based on our institutional goals and our institutional resources, right? So it's important that you check out each of these schools. Maybe one state institution is 5 minutes away from your house, but another one is 2 hours away. Check both of them out, see what you think. But yeah, we're all very different and have different criteria.
Yeah, and a lot of our majors overlap. We all have English and biology, that sort of thing. But there are certain programs that one school may not have that another one does. At UMass Dartmouth, they have a great marine biology program. We don't have an undergraduate marine biology program. Music, what do you call it? Engineering, they have that at UMass Lowell. We don't have that. There's certain things, Kate was talking about the learning differences program there. And I actually went to a session that you did, I don't know, I think it was last year at one of the conferences. And I mean, Westfield State's like the GOAT of learning differences in terms of what the services that they offer. We don't have that level, so they're all different, so, don't get caught up in the, all this, only want to go to that one because it's got this program, or they, that one seems more prestigious, whatever. They're all great. They all have their own things that make them great. I have a friend from high school, and I graduated from UMass Amherst back in the late 1900s. And my senior year was when Southeastern Massachusetts University became UMass Dartmouth, and University of Lowell became UMass Lowell. Now, back then it was like, what? We're the real UMass, whatever. So I still get a little crotchety when people say, I say I went to UMass. They're like, which one? I'm like, what do you mean, which one? Right? But even I know that those other schools have great things to offer. I have a friend from high school whose son applied to UMass Amherst, was unfortunately on the wait list. And of course, that was one year where we were just not taking anyone off the wait list. It had to be the year that, that I knew someone who was trying to get off the wait list. And they ended up going to UMass Dartmouth. And the kid set the world on fire. He did 2 study abroad programs. He ended up going to law school. He's a lawyer. The kid is wildly successful and ended up loving it there. And it was a great fit for him. It turned out to be a much better fit than we would have been for him, because once he sort of took the blinders off and said, wait a minute, let me take a look at these other campuses with less bias, if you will. He realized, like, the size and the setup and everything, this is more what I'm looking for. And it had the programs that he wanted. So, it's about sort of, checking them out and really considering them on their own merit. They're all great programs.
Sure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate hearing that. So I know we have at least one question pending in the chat. That is all of the questions that I have prepared for the panelists, but I just wanted to give you all an opportunity if there was anything else you wanted to share about your school that I didn't ask, or any topic that you'd feel like would be helpful. Feel free if you want to jump in. Otherwise, I'll transition just to these last minute questions from parents. Anything else anyone wants to add? Wonderful. So I see that there's one question in the chat. It's asking if these colleges are offering a full schedule of on-campus information session and tours. Anyone, is that something that all of the colleges are offering at this point? Perfect. I would say, if you're thinking about touring, definitely look at the admissions website. You should be able to see a list of both in-person and virtual offerings. And again, with, we never know what's going to be going on in the world these days, so things do change. But I know that a lot of colleges are trying to offer those in-person sessions as much as possible. So definitely check out for both of those opportunities.
We have the same number of sessions as pre-pandemic, but like probably the other schools on here, there are caps. We're not accommodating the same amount of people. So I think going on websites and trying to register in advance will be what you need to do. And I think if you have your heart set on visiting during the academic year, just keep in mind that if you don't get on it quick enough, that might not be possible. And you might have to think about a summer visit rather than an academic year visit. But I now that the semesters have started for many of us, or will start soon, those visit schedules are going to go up on websites. So it'd be good to try to register, especially if you're looking to visit around school vacation weeks, try to get that information up there and register, because we're not accommodating as many people in each session as we did pre-pandemic.
That's really a great
I'd say
point.
too, make sure, even after you sign up for the tours and information sessions, make sure you check your email. Because as we know, with COVID, things can change hourly, never mind daily or weekly, right? So, I say, as you're getting in the car, check your email, check your, check the website, and make sure, it's still okay to visit, because you never know how things can change. So definitely keep an eye on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I want to remind students and families too that at Medfield, we do offer juniors and seniors 3 excused absences to attend a college tour. So if you're planning on doing that, you can pick up a form in the guidance office to get that excused before you go on your visit. So sometimes that can be a really great option if, school vacation week doesn't work out for you, or there's no room on the tour. Sometimes if you go on a random Wednesday, you might have some more success there. So just know that we do offer some excused absences. Somebody asked what they think, what do you think are the major differences between between your schools? This is a pretty big question. I think that the schools, they are so different. So I think, really looking at using Naviance and looking at the individual websites to really figure out the offerings. Certainly we have schools here that are large, they're small. Northeastern has their co-op program, which is the kind of hands-on internship type of experience, which kind of sets Northeastern apart. There certainly are a lot of differences. So really looking at the admission websites and doing the tours and using Naviance as a resource, I think will provide some more detailed information there. A question about going back to SATs. So because SAT scores were optional for a lot of colleges, I assume students sent their test scores only if they were top 50%. Therefore, college SAT scores would have risen for most schools as of last year. For next year, should we go by older averages or most recent averages? Does anyone want to jump in there?
That's a really good question, because I think, well, if you look on our website, it should have. We were putting in our brochures. We were doing pre what do you call it? SAT optional numbers, right? So and yes, of course when you're looking at now that we're test optional, the numbers certainly shot up in terms of the average. Most schools will have some sort of historic, like the past few years, what the SATs looked like, and what their general numbers look like too. So if you look at on their website and they say this is what our average is, for this particular year, and it's sky high, you can look a little deeper into the website, and they'll have some historical numbers as well, and you may be able to find that too in the guidance office too. Through Naviance, things like that. So definitely, sometimes you have to, you may have to do a little more homework with as far as that's concerned. It's an interesting thing to think about.
And I agree with Jared. I think that's a fair conclusion to draw, that we're all reporting higher testing because the sample is skewed a little bit. I think that's fair. I would just say that this is really, really fluid. And so what Jared just said is your best resources are the school counselors, because it's fluid for even them, but we're talking to them, and I know some families choose to utilize resources outside of the school, which that's up to the family, but the people we're talking to and giving the most relevant information to are our colleagues in school counseling. And so checking Naviance data since the pandemic started to look at the testing from Medfield students or not, could be helpful information to figuring out that question more than maybe looking back at old data. Look at what's happened the last couple of years with Medfield students.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for mentioning Naviance, Jeff. I know that, one of the tools we have in Naviance for students is to be able to see those scattergram graphs where you can see kind of average GPA and SAT for each particular college. And so looking at that test score data, I think there's still value there to give you a sense of the general range over the years for that school, but definitely taking it a little bit with a grain of salt, just that Naviance doesn't quite show who actually submitted their test scores and what that looks like. So again, kind of still using those scattergrams to give you a sense, but really looking at the college's individual website and language about their average SATs and their test optional policy and all of that. So that's definitely something to think about. Perfect. In the rep's opinion, what makes their school unique? This is a little bit similar, just, the question that had come up before. I think that there are so many things that make each of these colleges, unique. I'd mentioned the co-op program, Northeastern, UMass being a larger institution, having all different kinds of programs, Tulane offering access to research. Reps, was there anything else kind of about your school that you didn't get to mention yet that you feel like really stands out that you want to share?
I mean, I could mention that we are ranked #1 for food.
For food, yes.
So for college dining, we are ranked #1 in the country. We have been for 5 years running. So if for no other reason, you want to check out UMass just for the food, come and check us out. Come for the food, stay for the education, I always say.
I'm just saying that we've had UMass staff on our campus for a number of years implementing that in-house food services as well. So I'm going to piggyback on that.
Yeah, there you go.
I think what makes each of us unique really depends on the student and what their interests are. So if, you have a student that's really interested in Greek life, then, they're not going to find much of anything at Westfield unique. You know what I mean? Whereas at another institution, they might. However, like our setting, we're a very self-contained campus. We're in a suburban area. It's in a historic neighborhood. It's, these are all things that makes us unique. We've got an incredible honors program, but for someone who's not interested in the honors program, that may not stick out. So I think it really is, the student needs to do the research and kind of narrow down priorities, even though it's a challenge, no doubt. And parents and guardians, just remember that the student has to spend their 4 years at this institution, and you're not the one attending college. So just keep that in perspective when you're doing that search. I know when I started talking to my daughter about it, and she's a few years away, I've had to kind of bring it back in, like, 'cause I get so excited about things and she just rolls her eyes. So just think about, what some of the priorities might be, whether it's a large student government population or a large intramural sports program. I tend to talk about our learning disabilities program a lot, but that doesn't apply to 90% of our students. It's 10% of our student population. So, I really think it depends on the student to identify what makes the campus stand out to them. And don't discount any campus that you haven't heard of. There's so many colleges and universities. Take a chance, go to a college fair, take some brochures, look it up.
That's a great piece of advice. And I think we will end on that note, Kate. That is a great takeaway, with the process, just being open. Don't just apply where your friends have applied. Really, really think about what's important to you, where you're going to feel happy and be successful and enjoy living for 4 years. This is really about you as a student and your future. So just be open to all the possibilities. There are so many different colleges out there. So just as a reminder, I will be sending the recording to everyone. If anyone wants to look back at this in the future and just remind themselves of some of the points we discussed. We will be through our office sending monthly junior newsletters. So I just sent the first one earlier this week. It just gives families an idea of what to focus on and some general resources. So we'll send one out every month throughout the spring to kind of help you stay organized. And just as a reminder, reach out to your guidance counselor. If you are feeling lost or overwhelmed, or you have no idea what's going on, don't feel like you are doing this alone. We are here for you. We're happy to meet with you as frequently as needed. And hopefully attending this panel, you're able to see these reps and see that the people reading your application are humans. They want you to feel happy and successful. They've got a tough job. They know that there are so many amazing applicants and they can't always say yes to everybody. But again, I think if you stay true to yourself in the process, apply to schools where you feel like you can be successful, and apply to a balance of schools in that reach, match, and likely category, you really can't go wrong. So we're all here to support you in this future planning process. It's a really exciting time. So, reach out for help when you need it. We're always happy to help you from the guidance side and also the college admissions side. Stephanie, is there anything else you need to add as we wrap up? Okay, perfect. Thank you to all of our panelists for attending. This is so incredibly helpful for everybody. Really appreciate your time. And as always, reach out to our office. We're always happy to connect with the admissions side. Thank you so much.
Thank you.